right away. This also is going to be downloaded into our app, so you will be able to access the course via our education app. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody to the gastrointestinal/ulcer assessment and protocol. Your instructor for this class is going to be Brian Owen. He is an advanced diploma applied equine podiatrist, among other things, engineer, equine body worker, engineer extraordinaire, and all sorts of things. So we are going to jump in and get started because this is one of those topics that is hopefully you never have to deal with it. However, there will be times if you are in the horse industry that you will probably run across it either through one of your own animals or possibly through a friend or at the barn that you're at. And so I am going to turn it over to Brian so that he can get you guys all up to speed on how to use light therapy to get through this really, really difficult situation.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Again, my name is Brian, and this is one of my talks I like to do a lot about because it's one of that most of our people out there that own horses are a little bit naive on, a little bit resistant on, going, no, my horse probably doesn't have ulcers or gastral issues. And we find out this to be an interesting topic. This is actually one of the classes I teach in my higher level classes, and we haven't really introduced this to the public yet because ulcerated horses can be very, very, very dangerous to work on. They like to bite, they like to jump, they like to kick, their ears are back all the time, they're always upset, nothing goes right, and it's definitely not a training issue, all right? But I'm going to preference this right up front is that when we get into showing you what to do for the ulcer, it's very, very important that you follow the protocol to the letter. We have done this in a manner that makes it safe to do. If you go out of order, if it does matter the order, it does matter how you do it. If you go out of order, there is a potential of getting injured. So we have done all the injury work for you. We've taken the kicks, we've taken the licks, we've taken the bites. So we've helped you out so that way you don't have to do this. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so move to the next slide. So you'll find that horses that have gastral issues and ulceration issues are kind of like this guy looks. They are not happy. They're difficult to handle. They'll kick when you try to do the feet. Farriers hate that. They're very aggressive. They'll come after you. I mean, it's just not normal for a horse to be cinchy or be where they buckle down to just because you're starting to brush them. You know, it's not that they're itchy. It's not that they are sensitive. That's usually a sign that there's something going on. And skin pain is one of the areas where you'll see a lot of issues with it. So they'll resist going forward, they'll rear, they'll buck, everything is going to be going backwards. And the question is, does your horse have ulcer? Now, I learned most of my training in ulcerations through Dr. Kerry Ridgway. I don't know if any of you guys know Dr. Kerry Ridgway at all. And he stated that it's not that your horse has ulcers, it's a matter of when they'll have ulcers, and that 70% of horses out there have ulcers of some kind. Now, it's not a real easy thing to have checked out from the veterinarians. You got to go in there with a scope, you got to go down and they have to check the stomach out to see what's going on. But the cool thing is what we're going to show you guys in the next 2 hours is how you can very, very simply and quickly.
Move to the next slide. This is all story.
Okay, quickly to find out what's going on. So other symptoms that will appear is there will be a lot of body pain, muscle or myofascial tension. You know, it seems like there's a lot of chiropractic issues, like they're like, how come they won't stay in place? Decrease in performance. But one of the big things you'll notice really quick is that like the coat will get dull, their body, they'll have dull look in their eyes, their personality, and they'll start to lose weight. And that's all due to pain. So
I'm gonna just jump in there real quick on the horsenality, because this is something typical if you have a horse and you have a great relationship, and then you come out there and all of a sudden the attitude has changed or something has drastically shifted and their horsenality has seemingly changed. They've gone from, you know, being, you know, a pretty centered right brain extrovert to being seemingly a very off the charts right brain extrovert, or maybe even left brain extrovert with having behaviors outside of the norm. These are things to look for. And the reason that I wanted to jump in and really articulate this is because we are all about prevention. So if that happens, like, and you've already got your internal checklist of what could it be, this is going to be one of those things that you're going to just jump right into, and because it'll end up taking you like less than a minute, and it's going to give you a great indicator of what's really going on and what's causing the attitude.
all right.
Go ahead.
So, yes. So when you see a change in your horsenality or personality, whatever you want to call it, I guess we call it horsenality because it is a horse, it's not a person. That's usually a sign something's not right. All right. So something's going on, typically pain-wise. And then how often do we have stomach ulcers? Well, I said a little bit, Dr. Kerry Ridgway threw a number out there about 70%, but 90% of racehorses, they did a study, these are from studies, 30 to 60% of show and performance horses, 67% of endurance, 40% Western, where you can see all the rest of them. Just horses that stock out in the pasture, 66% of pregnant mares have them, and 75% of non-pregnant mares. That's an interesting one to me. So stress has a huge effect on horses and gastro ulcers that can happen. So, like I talked about, you have to be safe. Safety when you're talking this stuff. I have seen horses just doing exactly what's in these pictures, going over the top of people. People saying, no, this is a training issue, and they go and push that horse, and we find out they were in so much pain, just the fact that they put their legs on the side of them, threw them over backwards, and you know, they landed on top of them. Not a good thing. So they'll strike out, bite, kick, rear, buck, you name it. And of course, they will want to get out of Dodge and get out of there. So behavioral patterns as a result of ulcer pain is pain, anxiety, fear, and then of course, I'm out of here. Avoidance. Aren't those kind of cute cartoons? How many people have been there ready to put the saddle on their horse and they're out of there? I got people raising their hand already. So yes, it's not a fun spot, but it does get there. So ulcers are typically a man-made disease, all right? So NSAIDs used such as bute, other stomach issues cause up to 50% more chance of getting ulcers. Stuff like limited time out, horses not being fed hay. Horses are meant to eat 24/7, not twice a day for 2 flakes of hay, and then you walk away and you leave them in their stall. Horses with infrequent feed and incomplete diets. Fast exercise on few days a week. I mean, where you really just go out and push them up and get them nice and wet, that can cause all these things. Rigorous training, anything that can stress out the horse. Grain-based feeds, we're going to talk about that. That's a big one. And again, I got limited hay, turned out limited twice as far as hay goes. Intermittent feeding, in other words, you're just doing it twice a day. It's so simple just to get them a slow feeder so that it lasts them 3-4 hours, even if they're in a stall, that they get a longer time to eat their hay. Traveling in as in Europe, they'd say in the float or in your trailer, can have a problem, and just too much activity. So these are all things that us as people induce onto the horse. And
So,
what's the issue? Go ahead.
so Brian, I need you to look at the camera.
Am I not looking at the camera?
No.
Oh, what am I looking at?
I don't know.
Well, it's underneath my camera. I'm reading it.
Brian.
Okay. We are married.
So the other thing that I really would like to articulate, and this was actually 2 slides back, but it was kind of just glossed over on that statistics page that Brian had about the percentages of horses with ulcers. Those were stomach ulcers. Those were stomach ulcers. Horses can get ulcers in the intestinals, in the small bowels and the large bowels as well. So those statistics that we provided were just in the stomach. So this has a huge, like, it's a, we're not actually talking one organ in the body. We're actually talking like 3 different organs in the body or more. So I just wanted to articulate that. For all intents and purposes, the assessment that you're going to learn and the protocol that you're going to learn, it covers all of it. So, and we also need to put a disclaimer in there that we are not teaching you guys how to diagnose. This is just the only true way to diagnose is an ulcer is to have the horse scoped. So this is one of those things that we have found and that acupuncture veterinarians have found to be incredibly accurate. So.
All right. So just what Donna was talking about. What are we talking about? We're talking about acids in the body. Okay, horse has all kinds of acids. They have the hydrochloric acid, the volatile fatty acid, and the bile acid. And they can be anywhere in the stomach lining, small bowel, or large bowel. So it can be anywhere. Because what an ulceration means is it is a opening wound that is bleeding or possibly just open in the system. So it can create scarring. It can be bleeding. Deep ulcers can also proliferate in the stomach wall. So you can have all kinds of ulcers going on based on how much acid's in the body. And I'm going to throw a couple things out there when we get the next couple. I'm not going to spoil them, but when we get in there, you're going to go, oh my gosh, I did not know this in horses. So dangers in ulcers is it reduces their immune system. All right. It increases the risk of colic and diarrhea. So one of the signs you see is if we had one at one time, we were out at a horse function and we got called over and the horse was colicking, we got it better. And to find out later that this horse had colicked 6 times in the last 2 weeks and it just came in off the trailer. Well, this horse ended up passing away because it had an intestinal ulcer and actually shedded the lining of the inside of the intestine inside out and plugged up in the horse. So these are signs. So if your horse colics more than twice in a month, there's something else going on. Okay, it's typically not just heat or something else going on. So it can cause toxins in the gut, in the hindgut, leaky gut syndrome. It can deplete the minerals. They could go into, this horse you're seeing is actually sweating really bad, and then you could tell it's sucking up its belly. They can, I've come up to horses where there's just like they're raining off them, and then other horses are the opposite. They could be in full anhidrosis and they're dry as a bone, but you can tell they're in so much pain. And you got perforating ulcers, resulting in where it can actually end up being in death. So it'll just get worse and worse and worse until finally they can't take it anymore. So you got to look for the signs. So how does the pasture help? Pasture is amazing for ulcers. Is that a little deer with that? That's pretty cool. So it decreases the acid buildup when they're on pasture. All right? And we'll talk about why that happens. It's more or less continuous grazing all the time. So they're always grazing like they're supposed to. The stomach seldom deviates from the roughage material. And then chewing produces a bicarbonate-rich cell. In other words, it brings the pH of the stomach back down by the chewing part. So that's where teeth can also come into this too. And I believe we will talk about that. So having them out on pasture as much as you can, but then you also have to pasture manage, because you can't always have them out in short pasture or have them out when, horses that founder or get laminitic. So it's got to be something you watch. So free choice grass hay. Okay. And I had notes on this, and I don't have those with me, but when you're looking at the pH level of grass hay, you want to be above 4 for the pH level of the hay and not below 4. Like you take alfalfa, clovers, all those are in the low pH level. They're going to bring up the acids in the body. And then if you get into like hays like Timothy, Tifton, sometimes coastal, those are all where they're going to be higher pH, and it's going to alkaline the body. So you don't want to be in acid as much. You want to be alkaline more than acid, because acid burns the inside of the stomach. Okay, so the stomach is relatively small. It has to produce the food rapidly and then move it into the small intestine. It's geared to have small amounts of food come through as roughage, to float through the acids, absorb the acids, and move it into the next levels of where they're going to be digested either in the small intestine or in the large intestine. When acids accumulate in the stomach, that's when the problem starts to happen. So horses that are under stress will produce 1.5 liters per hour in a 24-hour day. And that starts to eat. So that's a lot of acid that has to go through their system. And what that does is that acid mixes with the roughage that you have going through there, and then it goes pulled into the small intestine, and it's broken down so that way it can be absorbed in the small intestine, and then goes in the large intestine where it can go out as waste. If you don't have roughage coming through and all they have is acids going through, now you have stronger acids going into the small and large intestine. So cutting, like we talked about, feeding twice a day just doesn't cut it. You have to carry those out somehow. So going on to the next one. So here's what the inside of a stomach of a horse looks like. So you can see that as you get higher on the stomach wall, the pH goes up and it gets more, it gets less acidic and gets more alkaline. And then halfway down the stomach, it's medium, and all the way down to the bottom is the higher density stomachs. And then it goes out into the small intestine. Now, the reason that's supposed to work is that the foliage is supposed to float on the top, start picking up liquid, and as it goes through, it's just picking up more acids and then carrying it out. But what ends up happening, and I don't know if you guys can see my pointer, I should probably put a different one on it. If this acids down here get all the way up to here, this wall lining, this wall lining over here on each side cannot take the higher acids. And that's how the ulcerations happen, is that you have to have food continuously coming in order to get them to go out. The food comes in, carries through, and goes out. All right? Not going to go into all the technical terms here. So we have both the squamous, non-glandular tissue, and then the glandular mucus type tissue. The lower part of the stomach only represents 20% of the ulcers. The upper part of the stomach is 80% of the ulcers. So when this acid comes up into here, that's when it burns the side of the stomach. So you ask myself, what about when a horse lays down and it, doesn't it get, yes, it will get in, but once they stand back up, the acids separate again, and the lesser acid is up and it kind of washes it off. So it's not that big a deal. But when it's all high acidic acid, then you start having some problems. So one of the best ways to get it through is having them eating foliage all the time. That's how they're designed in the wild. They would move 20 miles a day and they would eat all the time. I don't know anybody, we have 26 acres, they still don't get a chance to walk 20 miles a day. So grains is the next issue in the stomach. When grains are in the stomach, they're broken down into volatile fatty acids. When you add that to the hydrochloric acid and the bile acids, it ends up leaving the stomach quicker. And because it doesn't break down as fast as what foliage does, it goes all the way back into the large intestine. And that's typically when grains break down. And that's when you start getting the gas colics and the different issues of a lot of gas and a lot of problems, is that it's not being broken down in the small intestine like it's supposed to. It gets broken down in the large intestine. So you need to have some, when you're talking about grains, you got to be a little careful. So like whole grains, we never, personally, we have found that we never feed whole grains to a horse. For one thing, I look at the horse and what comes out of it, I see all the grain coming back out of it. It doesn't do much, right? So you at least get a cracked grain, or limit the amount that you're actually putting in there. So then another thing that helps first is to feed the roughage first and then the grain afterwards. So getting a grain that is very soluble, will break down, is a very important thing. Got anything you want to add to that, Donna? Must be no.
What no is just called so I think the point is that really just to have a greater understanding of how the acids work when it comes in, and really to understand like how much bile is actually secreted from your horse. So it's one of those things that until you really look at the statistics on it, it's pretty eye-opening. And so Shoka says, how is cool stance in this picture? It's not a grain, so it's okay. We are going to get into that a little bit later. We're not going to touch a whole lot on it because, like if we could talk about equine feeds, we could be here forever. So the situation with cool stances, that's actually coconut meal. So it's not a grain at all. And right. It actually, Brian will go into it. It actually slows down the process. Like it takes longer for the horse to digest it. So it stays in their stomach longer. So it really helps to absorb that excess acid that's in there, and really helps with preventing ulcers, if you will. And also it helps with because of the fatty acids in there, it helps with helping to overcome them. And so Karen Albin says, are pelleted feeds or other ration balancer feeds better than grain, or do they digest the same?
Well, that can go into a big topic as well, but typically feeds that are pelletized or heated have lost a lot of the enzymes that are in, and we're going to be talking about that in the next slide, that's in the feed itself that helps to break it down. So then you're relying on the horse to create more higher acids to break down those feeds because they're harder to break down. And that's just part of the heating process of making a pelletized feed. Probably what's more important than that is what we said here is feeding hay first. I know none of us do that. We all feed our horses their grain and throw them two flakes of hay or 3 flakes of hay and walk away. All right. But if there's any way they could been on a slow feeder or just in between, eating roughage first and then give them their grain is going to be a bigger benefit than anything else that you've got going on. So I tend to steer away from unnatural things. I like things that are ground up. I like things that are I don't like pelletized feed that much. That's my personal opinion, just because I know how long it takes for that, or what it takes to break them down. And we're going to talk about more about that. All right, we good to move on? Okay, so small intestine. So we've already got the stomach is producing the acids. The idea is that the roughage is coming into the top of the stomach. It floats on the stomach. It goes down to the bottom of the stomach, picks up all the acids and moves them into the small intestine. So what does the small intestine do? It's your digestive area, aided with enzymes. And I talked about this, is that heated food, microwave food, heated food, all these things destroy enzymes in the food. It's just what it does. It also, in the small intestine, you're going to break down your starch and complex carbohydrates, and it all gets absorbed through the small intestine gut wall. So this is where most of the nutrients of what you're going to be putting into your horse is supposed to go through. So if you have any kind of a foliage or a grain, or let's say a whole grain, and it does not dissolve in the small intestine, you're really not absorbing anything that's good into your horse. Same with most alfalfa will break down in the large intestine because it's such a hard protein that takes a large acid to break it down. Versus, like you guys talked about, cool stance, that's a protein that it does not take a very low pH or a high acid to break down. It breaks down with the more alkaline type of system, and that's why they absorb more of those nutrients. That's why we like that so much. So that is the function of the small intestine, is that's where most of the nutrients are coming from. It's also one of the areas where most of the problems happen. So when you have foods that are not breaking down like they're supposed to, they can get locked up in the small intestine, and that's where you get impactions, problems, and so forth. So if you're getting a lot of impactions in your horses, or a lot of gas and impactions, you may want to look at what is it that they're eating, and why is it not breaking down right, and maybe it's just the horse is too acidic.
Okay, Brian, Luncheon has a question, and she says, when you evaluate the pH of hay, are you taking the pH of the particular hays or the effects of consuming the hay on the horse's saliva pH or the blood pH?
Well, that would be the wonderful way to do it. I think most time the way it's done is they just do a pH analysis of the foliage itself. Have you seen something different, Donna, than that?
No, you can't really, I mean, in order to do that, like that's the way that they need to do it, is it's dependent on the pH of the hay itself, and every crop is different. So unfortunately, if you have a super sensitive horse, you need to be on top of that. And now I also want to add a little bit of information about alfalfa. So alfalfa is kind of one of these balancing things where too much can cause problems.
Yep.
But in horses that actually have ulcers, it a little bit can actually be very beneficial to them, because alfalfa is typically higher in calcium. And so if you think of Tums, Tums is it's a calcium carbonate. So what that does is it reduces the stomach acidity I'm tongue-tied tonight, due to the buffering effect of calcium. And so because alfalfa is typically higher in calcium, and actually feeding a horse a little bit of alfalfa, especially before working or training or before a strenuous situation or a high anxiety situation, it actually could be used as a preventive. And that's also one of the reasons that the racehorse industry uses alfalfa so much, because if you recall that slide that Brian shared with the statistics of the race horses, it's super high. So keep that in mind if you're dealing with it. Alfalfa is not always a bad thing. It can be used on an interim basis or in small amounts to assist with bringing down the excess acidity for the horse. So you might want, just something for you guys to think about. Somebody else had asked about pelleted hay. Mayor Gilbert asked about pelleted hay. Brian and I have always found that everything that is like as unprocessed as possible is going to be your best bet. However, reality dictates that, especially because you guys are all across the world, and there's situations where you have to use pelleted hay. Pelleted hay is not going to be bad, but you just have to remember that it has to be soaked before.
Yes, wetting it down first is what you have to do.
Yep.
You want to get the process going and get things breaking down before they actually eat it.
Yep. Great questions, you guys. I love it.
And the more you can get your horse to not just attack something and bring it down, what you want them not to do is you don't want them to really swallow big mouthfuls of food. You want them to swallow smaller, chewed up, get the chewing process going. That's why we're so advocates about the slow nets, because they're not going to pull out a big mouthful of hay and swallow it down, because then all that happens is that ball of hay just goes right to the bottom of the stomach and goes through without getting it. But if they chew it up and it gets into finer pieces, all those absorb much more of the bile that's going to be going through. So, and that's why when we do our cool stance and everything else, when we do put some, because we can't get alfalfa in Florida. We just can't grow it here. So
well, we can get alfalfa, but it's like $25 for a bale of alfalfa hay.
Well, it's probably more than that. But even at that, you get either all alfalfa or you get, something else. And so we can't get the 20-30% alfalfas, which is what you should have. You really should never feed more than 30% alfalfa in the hay mix. So, all right. Okay, I think we did that one. All right, there we go. I think I went through a couple of them now. All right, so the thing decided to stand still and then move. Okay, so the time that it typically takes for food to go through the small intestine is about 1.5 hours. That's not really that long. I mean, there's a lot of intestines in a horse. And that requires that the grain be well broken down already in the stomach This will provide the proper process as it goes through for it to be absorbed the nutrients. So breaking it down means that they have to eat slow. They have to have roughage with it. Some people even mix up the roughage with the grain. So when they're eating, they eat, you know, some roughage with it to slow them down. It isn't a bad idea. When we do a cool stance, we always mix it with water. And the nice thing about cool stance that once it's in the stomach, it absorbs four times its volume in water or bile. So that's why we like it so much, because it absorbs so much of the acids and takes them out, and it really makes a huge difference. So, all right, unless there's more questions on that one. The large ball or the hind gut. Okay, the cecum is the first portion of it. The cecum is where it goes from the large intestine to the small intestine to the large intestine. It receives the food into an alkaline environment. In other words, the hind gut is an alkaline environment. Do you guys get that? It's not an acidic environment. So it finishes the digestion of the tough fibrous foods and process, so a lot of the roughage. Not well adapted to processing concentrates, in other words, grain. Okay, it's digested by trillions. That's the word is trillions, just like the dollars we're getting now, right? Anybody get their $1 trillion? I didn't get it. Of good bacteria. Breaks to, I don't remember what VFAs are. Do you remember what those are, Donna? If not, we'll have to look them up. Does it say on the? I don't know. That are absorbed through the gut wall. I'm sorry, fatty acids, that's what it is. I'm sorry. So when you feed too much, I'm watching Tom. I watch every time Tom breaks up and laughs. I must be like saying something wrong. When you feed too much alfalfa or too many grains, what ends up happening is that it gets acidic in the hind gut. And it doesn't like that. Acidity in the hind gut breaks down those trillions of good bacteria. It also creates gas. So this is when the horses start getting diarrhea and gas colic and so forth, and you start seeing them where they're, you know, they got very wet, loose stool. It's not formed correctly. These are all signs that it is not at a proper pH in the hind gut. And vets can go in and they can pull out the stool and do a test to find out what your pH level is in the hind gut to know where you're at, if you need to do that, if you're having problems. So if I was having a horse with a lot of diarrhea, I would have that tested by the vet and get your results and find out that maybe the issue just comes down to you have an ulcer in the stomach and the pH is off, and you secure the ulcer and life might be good after that. Okay. Okay, so, and I already jumped ahead of myself a little bit here. So acid environment, the high good bacteria is replaced by bad bacteria. Everybody's toxic, everybody understands that, and then thrives in the acid environment. So bad bacteria loves acidic level, okay? It loves being in an acid type arrangement. So you hear this in humans where, like with H. pylori, different things of where people have stomach issues, and it's because their acidity is off and they're too acidy, and that causes a lot of problems. Now, acidity can have other results on horses. We have found that like ring bone, excess bone growth, brittle bones, all these things are caused from being too too much acid in the body. So it also can damage the intestinal wall and let in exotoxins into the bloodstream, which means it's just letting in bad bacteria, and it's just not good, not a good environment. So the only place that it should be very acidic is in the stomach. All right. And that has to be dissolved down and broken down so the nutrients and the enzymes all work in the small intestine, and then the large intestine has to do its work, but it has to continue to be in a more alkaline environment than so much an acidic environment. So large bull hindgut issues, grain, fatty acids producing gas and lactic acid.
That's volatile fatty acids.
Volatile fatty acids, thank you. Large bull hind. It can cause a very more acidic environment, and good bacteria dies and releases poison endotoxins. So in other words, the bad bacteria takes over. So kind of talked about most of that in the other one. So traditional method of diagnosing is an endoscope.
So Brian, before we jump into the traditional method of diagnosis, why don't we all take just like, we're 45 minutes into it. So we're going to take, I think we just need to take like a quick 5-minute break.
Okay.
All right.
Yep. If you guys got any questions, you can jot them down and we'll answer them quick when we come back. Let everybody go use the restroom and.
Perfect. We'll see you guys at 7:50. All right, everybody. We are back. Thank you for allowing us to take a 5-minute break. So, Brian, are you ready to go back to you?
I am ready.
Awesome.
Can you guys see me though?
We can see you. We cannot see your presentation.
No. Then something's not right here. Okay. All right, okay, now I'm back to where I found my share screen. Just gotta put this in. Okay, I think we might be there now. Can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear you, Donna. You must be muted.
Yes, Brian, we can hear you.
Okay, so this takes us to the traditional method of diagnosis. Endoscopy is where they run a tube down the horse's mouth and they actually go into the stomach and they find out what's going on. And we actually show a picture there of what an ulceration looks like in the stomach. It can be very expensive. Anywhere from a couple $100 all the way up to $1,000, depending on where you live. And then, and this is, you know, the horse has to be sedated, and a lot of times when they're done with it, their issues can come about afterwards as far as additional ulcerations because they put something foreign in their stomach. So that it can also traditionally be diagnosed by acupuncture, muscles, and myofascial palpation. So ways they palpate is to do the acupoints or indicator points can give you actual results of what's going on. You can palpate the muscles in different areas, and if these muscles will react, we'll be doing some of that when we show you guys some of the assessments for it. And then you can palpate the myofascia or neuromuscular patterns. So all these things, when they're palpated, can give you some feedback that there is something going on. And all these patterns are consistent typically with the endoscopic examination findings. All right. So typical treating of ulcers can be very, very expensive. Anybody around has bought Ulcer Guard or any of these GastroGuards or whatever, it can be as high as $30 to $50 a dose. Or other ones that, the Cimetidine for $150 for 3 weeks worth of time to heal. And reoccurrence is quite common. A lot of times, I don't know how many of you guys can raise your hand that you've just given that kind of stuff and your ulcers go away without coming back again. A lot of times it comes back. When this happens, typically the training process gets reduced and it gets super frustrating and it's not very painful to horses, and most horses don't like the stuff too much. So that's been our experience in it. Now the holistic approach, there is holistic approaches, and one thing about holistic approach is that you want to be more preventive than you are being treating. So stopping the ulcers from happening is more important than taking care of the ulcers when they happen. So being smarter about how you're feeding, your feeding regimen, and what you're doing is what the holistic approach is. So number one, 24/7, you're providing hay for the horses. They may not eat it all the time, but they can regulate themselves on when they do it. Now that doesn't mean you just take a couple large bales, put them out there, and let them go to town, because that's not going to be good either, because they'll go into impactions and everything else then. So in order to slow them down, then you have to give them some way of not eating so fast. So what we love to use is the hay nets. So we use them in the stalls, or we use them over a round bale. We always remove the outside of the round bale, so that way you get rid of the bad hay, or you get rid of the netting that's on that. And then we like to put out a round bale of just a very, very low, very alkaline, like Tifton hay or type of hay, and then on a slow net, and then we open up the pastures. It tends to let our pastures grow a little more, because it's funny that you would think, oh, they're just going to go out and be on pasture all the time, but they don't. They like to come back and they spend an hour or two on the hay net, then they go to sleep, and then they get a drink of water, and then they go back out on the pasture, and they just keep doing this, and they keep rotating around. The other thing is it gets them moving. So our horses come up for water probably 6, 7, 8 times a day, and we put the hay net halfway between the pastures and the water, so that way they're always choosing and picking what they want to do. So cut back and change feed. In other words, I talked about this on a little bit of an interview today, is that one of the culprits of a lot of things that's going on in our horses is us. We kill them with kindness. We give them too many different kinds of things, and too many different kinds of feeds, too many different kinds of supplements. And really, horses just really need foliage and minerals to survive. Now, if you're into a specialty sport, that can be a different thing. Like if you're into racehorsing or dressage or different things. But just in general, to survive, they don't need all that much. And I'm just going to tell you guys right out right now, and I'm going to get in trouble with this, I am not a beet pulp fan, okay? Because of the sugars, because of what it can do to the feet. And everybody says, well, the sugars are already removed. And I say, well, if you put beet pulp in a pan and you put water in it, you leave it overnight, does it not ferment by the next day? And they all go, yeah. That means there's sugars in it. You have to have sugars to do that. So even though they say they've gotten them all out, there's still quite a bit in it. Cool Stance, I can't talk enough about this product. We've been carrying it now for 3 years because it is a great non-grain option with a low NSF food, which means that it digests at a lower alkaline acid versus at a high acid to break it down, which means it gets absorbed in the small intestine and does its job. So it's for down in our area in Florida, it really works great. I've had people use it up in Canada in the cold weather. I think Jan's probably on her. She uses it. She has great results. So it seems to work everywhere. Reducing stress. So think about what puts stress into your horse's body. It can be when horses that are on a time frame to be fed every day, and then all of a sudden one day you don't feed at that time. Our horses get fed sometimes at 6, sometimes at 8, sometimes it's 10 o'clock at night. They never know when they're going to get fed. So we reduce that stress situation by doing that. And in training, is the training more of a half an hour a day or 15 minutes a day versus going 3-4 hours of training all day long? You know, that can put a lot of stress into them.
The other thing about training that I want to add is that if the horse is having pain, so I'm going to go to my saddlebred. I've got a saddlebred and she is in training, and we were just really having issues with her. And it started out, we uncovered just about every stone, and she started getting really reactive and things like that. And it ended up that it was her saddle that did not fit as well as she would have liked it to. That was a very, very stressful situation for her. And, you know, during that time, she did have more time. I'm not going to say ulcers, but I'm going to say stomach issues. So it was one of those things that always be on the lookout, always be on the alert. I am, you know, we are pleasure horse riders, and we, you know, just play with our horses on the ground a lot. So I would not consider our horse's environment a high stress situation. But because there was pain involved, you have to get rid of the pain as quickly as possible. That's why we're always advocating for you guys to do your basic assessment, find the pain, get rid of the pain, so that it doesn't compound over time and create more problems than what you really want to do.
Yes. And typically when you know there's issues, there's always pain. So other holistic issues you can do is you can just add things to their system if you suspect that your horse may be a little more acidic. Is one of the easiest ones. I think the red light therapy should be listed first because that is one of the easiest ones, is aloe vera juice. Very, very reasonable to buy. It can be added to as a liquid, and it's a pretty simple thing to do. There is some equine elixirs out there that are available, and marshmallow root is another one.
Yep, and there's also a host of essential oils that can be used as well. However, for all intents and purposes, our specialty is red light therapy. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight.
Okay, so that brings us to the good stuff, because this is what you guys are all here for. So there is a very simple assessment you can do on the horse. All right, and we're going to show you guys me doing the assessment and then showing the up close so you guys can have. Remember, this is being recorded, so you guys are going to get a copy of this recording so you can go back over and over again. But it utilizes the responses to key acupuncture points. You already heard that earlier in the earlier slide. That's what one of the normal ways to do. Combined with physical pain reaction. Horses with ulcerations will show you pain. Evaluate of misfiring muscles and compensation patterns common to this condition can be early detected of colic or other GI issues. So in other words, by just checking this every once in a while, and it takes literally, guys, less than a minute and a half to do an ulcer check. But typically I go into an ulcer check after I started doing a regular assessment. You guys have seen our other mini clinics on assessing the horses. And if you get a horse that you can't get past those front shoulders without them reacting to everything, it's really good to switch to this assessment and see if you're getting everything, because if you are, your whole approach changes. And what I've always said in my upper level classes is that if you get any of these patterns showing up, you stop everything else you're doing and take care of this first, because nothing else is really going to work for you until this is cleared up, because it's going to mask everything else that's going on in the body. So with that, I'm going to move on to, and we do apologize a little bit that we have to jump to the YouTube page. Do you see it, Donna, right now?
I do. If you can share the full screen, that would be great.
Okay, let me get there. It's not showing up in...
It was working earlier today when we tested it, and then when we came into the office, it was not cooperating. So
now you can see me now?
yep.
All right. Not me, but you can see the video, right? Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and play this. So we got done doing the assessment, either the basic assessment or the actual assessment for finding gastrointestinal ulcer issues, and we do suspect something's going on. So now we're gonna move into the point work.
Oh,
These points
wrong
are
video,
very,
Brian.
very powerful. Okay.
That's the ulcer point overview. We need the gastrointestinal assessment.
Sorry guys, we have to do this the long way because it just stopped working on us. Okay, close up.
Ulcer assessment
There it
overview. There we go.
We'll get there. I always recommend first to do your regular assessment first, your basic assessment that we've taught in other classes. And if for some reason you can't even get past the front shoulder with that, abort that assessment and go into the assessment for the gastro ulcer issues. And then if for any reason you're not comfortable with doing that, I recommend just go right into the lighting, because that's what's going to do the work for you. All right, this just helps you to really understand what you have and what's going on. So a little bit first, with horses that have some kind of gastro ulcer or intestinal issues, they are going to be usually very, very, very reactive. They can be very, very dangerous. They can be very kicky. They can be very bitey, and it's all because of pain. And once you get through this and you eliminate that pain, you'll see a whole different horse you're working with. So we're going to get into it and start showing. Now I'm just going to show you overall where the lights, where the pen would go. Now I'm using my assessment pen, which is an RSVB pen, and I'm using it flat. So I'm going to be using it just like this. I do not go into more than that because we don't need that much. So the very first area we do is over the brachiocephalic. I have a line right here. I'm just going to simply just come down over that line. All right. The second place is just behind the front leg. This is called the ascending pectorals, and we're just going to do a little comma movement over this area here. And if this horse was majorly issues, this would all be jumping all over, and this would be jumping all over. All right. The third spot we're going to go to is over the withers. So we're going to come over the wither, over the scapula itself, and then to the back of the withers. So the way I do this, I just run my pen over and then back to here. And we're not getting too much on Zora. Now we're going to move to the back. So we're going to be working over the area of the croup itself. Now remember when we were looking at the back of the horse, we were looking for the croup only coming up on one side. So we're going to be working about a hand's width away, and I'm just going to keep my pen and I'm just going to go over. I'm getting a little reaction there. Okay. And next we're going to go underneath the belly. And we're going to do a close-up shot of this. So I'm just going to show you how I do this. I'm going to put one hand on top of the horse. I'm going to put my hand underneath. Find the xiphoid process, or where the ribs come together. And I'm going to go straight towards the belly button, pen flat, and come in. Horses that are highly ulcered will suck way up, and back feet will come right off the ground. And then the last place you go, if you follow the last rib down, and then when it turns, comes back, you're going to simply go back and forth over this rib. So Zora doesn't show a whole lot going on. She might have a little, and we'll know more when we go into doing the point work itself. So we'll next go into the close-ups of each of these areas. All right, so I gotta go to there next. Sorry, this is a little bit daunting, but okay. Ulcer assessment close-up, there we go. Another thing that's really good about doing this protocol is I love to use it in conjunction with horses that don't come out of colic very well, because I've had it where colic has gotten rid of colic by adding in the ulceration points. But again, you've got to be careful, and it has to be done in the order that I'm showing it to you. So the first one, again, is over the brachiocephalic. The brachiocephalic runs all the way over here over the front shoulder, and we're simply just going to run our pen down, and we're looking for a major reaction. The only reaction I'm getting is I'm actually seeing some movement up here, which is pretty minor. All right? The second point we're going to be looking at is called the ascending pectorals. They are located right here. And you can see where I have the blue mark, and I am just going to simply just run over this area. This is the area where the cinch goes. So when my horse is cinchy, it may not just be a horse is cinchy. There could be something going on stomach-wise. The third area is over the scapula spine or scapulous cartilage and then back to the bottom of the withers. So I'm going to take my pen flat, run over, and then up to this area. Now I would assess both sides of the body, but a lot of times if I get into a horse that's very, very, has a lot of stomach and ulceration issues, I don't even have to assess the other side because it's already showing me everything. So you don't have to push the horse. You may stop right here. If you're getting all three of these and it's pretty reactive, and you already had some stuff on the observation, I would quit right now and I'd be going to point work. There's no sense aggravating the horse because this is pain. I can't emphasize this enough, because if I was standing even right where I am right now in this much pain, I could get kicked. So we got to be careful that, and when I really do this one, I'd have a handler and I'd be actually standing from this direction so that I am not near those back feet. Because believe me, a horse that is ulcerated, all 4 feet will come off the ground when I do this. You guys, it's amazing. All right, so she's cocked her hip, which is really good right now. So we're going to be working over the croup area. So the fourth point is hands width away, starting about in line with the point of the shoulder of the hip. And we're just going to stay this direction and just run down this point. This is on the bladder meridian line, and just a couple times there. You don't have to do more than a couple times. Now this next shot has to be from underneath. Safety location that you need to be in is I put a hand on top of the horse, I put my leg facing back, my feet facing back, leg in line with her leg. I'm going to keep my head up. I'm going to find the xiphoid process, which is where the ribs come together in the center, and I'm just going to simply move up to the umbilicus. That doesn't have to be hard. I'm just going to rub across here and force the suck way up and jump. Then you know you're going to have some problems. We're going to move close on that from underneath. Oh, nice shot. And the last point we're going to do is where the last rib is. Now, if you don't know where the rib is, just simply feel back. You're going to find the last rib. It's going to run about this direction. Then it curves back, so it's going to be right at that point. You're just going to go back across this. Now you see the reaction that we got there a little bit? We got it right here. So that's telling me there's a slight issue with something going on, possibly with the stomach area, but we're not in the ulceration area. And this is where you want to be. You want to be detecting this now so that you don't have to get to where you're a full ulcerated horse. If you can get to it now and start doing it, you can prevent the ulcer from happening. And prevention is where we want to get to.
All right, well, I think we're going to move into a couple more videos quick here. There is a one is where we actually do an observation. Am I jumping ahead, Donna, or is the observation?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, so we're going to look at observation. I hope this is going to work.
Expect that there's something going on and your horse looks like they're off, and maybe when you brush them, they flinch a lot, or you touch them, they flinch a lot, and you notice that maybe they're not eating well or whatever. You suspect something gastro-ulcer or gastrointestinal is going on. So what we first like to do is some observation things first. So we're going to look at what's called the descending pectorals. That's these two muscles right here. And what we're going to be looking at, this muscle,
in this muscle. What we're going to be looking at is when we're walking back at you at a walk, do the muscles go up and down, or do they come across every time she moves? So a horse that has issues with intestinal issues, the brachiocephalic will be very, very sore. So instead of it just pulling the shoulder up in place, what it tends to do is it wants to pull it over each other. So then the muscles come across instead of up and down. The second thing we look at, I'm going to turn her around so you guys can just see it. We're going to walk her so you guys can see it, is we're going to look and see how the tail is carried. Do they have the tail off to one side? And then we're going to be looking at this flat area on the back of the horse. Does the horse, if the horse is normal, what their back end will do is it'll go up, come down, go up and come down, go up and come down. An ulcerated horse will go up one side and go to flat. Go up one side, go to flat. They don't go over and come down. So they don't use as much of that motion. So we're going to walk away from you, and we're going to let you observe what's going on. So I'm just going to do a straight line walk away from you. All right, so we're going to walk away, and I want you to observe how the tail is sitting. Is it sitting normal? And when you're having somebody do this, make sure they're not holding tight to the halter, that the horse can walk with his head like normal. I've got a loop in it, and you're just going to observe how that croup on the back side, if it's coming up and down on both sides, or if it's going up and flat. Coming back at you, we're going to look at the front pectorals, this area right here. Are they going up and down? Now she's got her head a little bit high, so we're going to wait till she settles down. Or are they coming across and across? And if you kind of look at hers are coming maybe across, but I'm going to walk one more time for you. We're going to walk back down. Again, watch the back side. Additional things you can look for is you can look for the rib swing. Do they swing from side to side, or are they swinging only to one side? But we're looking at the tail, we're looking at the croup, and how does that move up and down? And then we're going to turn, take a wide turn, come at you. Again, we're going to look at the pectoral muscles here, see which way they're moving. Do they look like they're moving up and down, or do they look like they're moving side to side?
All right, so let's take a look at those now close up. Okay, so we're going to look at the tail area first close up. And I'm not going to say much to you guys. I'll let you guys look. Also pay attention to which way the ribs go. If they're all going to one side is another clue. All right. Now we're going to look at the close-up of the pectoral muscles. So this is the gastrointestinal chart that we just looked at on the horse. And we list the location on here. We also list what the area concerned of what's happening for each one. So for example, when the first one happens, that means there's this issue with the shoulder or possibly even the highlight. The second one is mainly for stomach and shoulder soreness. The third one is posture imbalance, and fourth one is posture imbalance. Fifth one is stomach and hind gut. The sixth one is stomach and hind gut. So those are also clues. Now you guys learned that there is the stomach, there's the small intestine, and there's the hind gut issues. So in Zora, if you remember, her reaction was more on number 6 than it was anywhere else. So I would suspect that she has possibly something not right in the hind gut that we need to be looking at. All right. The next one goes over the videos we just talked about, walking forward and back. So I'm going to bring it back to this one. And I'm going to open this up now to discussion. First, what did people see when the horse was walking away? Anybody willing to either want to talk or write in something?
Well, so Karen Jones said the tail was to the right and the ribs were to the left. Karen Olvin says tail was off to the right, ribs out to the left.
Yep.
Shelley says point of tail to left, ribs to left.
Point of tail. Interesting. Okay. The ribs were definitely off to the left. The tail I seen was mainly off to the right. Everybody got that. Now, did anybody see any difference between the croup area coming up and down between the right side and the left side? It was kind of hard to see because she's a black horse and trying to get a good video.
So Shelley May says that they already went to the chest. So
okay.
So why don't you? We have 17 participants live. So do you want me to just unmute everybody, or?
Yeah, that's fine. We just unmute so people can just talk. And if we get some interference, we'll close it back down when we're talking.
Okay. Let me.
On the back of the horse.
I saw that the ribs were going to the left, the tail to the right.
Yep, tail was going to the right. Let me bring this video back up one more time for us all to look at it at the same time. All right, so let's watch this thing go in slow motion. So the tail's off to the right, and I see the left barrel. But now if you watch, the right hip does go up more than the left hip does. Right there, it's up, it comes down. Left one kind of goes up and doesn't really come
Can you put your cursor where you're talking about, Brian, please?
So like here, you see this is going up and it just kind of sits right there. This one goes up and comes way down to here. This one goes up and only comes to like here. This one goes up and way down.
Oh, so, now I understand.
Okay, everybody see that?
So, what else did you guys see? He's trying his best to bring up that video again.
Hey, Donna, Karen Jones here.
Hi, honey.
Hey, you know, it makes perfect sense now that Brian has put his cursors on for everyone to look at the top of the croup. If the ribs are moving out more to the left hind is not going to be able to step as far under the body. Therefore, correct. The left croup is going to be lower than the right croup. There's nothing in the way of the right side. So that might be another way for people to kind of notice where the track of the left is going.
Correct.
It's stepping straight. The right is stepping a little bit into the track of the left hind as she steps away.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. Great observation. Did that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Awesome. So this is only one, these are just visual indicators. So what we are doing is we are giving you guys a visual indicator, and then we're giving you palpation indicators. So that's what that assessment is. It's a combination of acupuncture points, myofascial points, and muscle points. So we have acupuncture points listed on all of those, and that's only for you guys so that you could have a landmark of where we need you to be testing. Does that make sense to everybody? So the visual indicators are not the be all end all. Those are just, hey, what puzzle are we putting together here? And this particular mare, she split her medial patellar ligament in half vertically 3 years ago. So, you know, if we were just strictly doing a visual evaluation, it could be easy to say that she has ulcers because of that back end and the sticking of the rib cage and, you know, tracking differently on one side versus the other. However, we know that that's from her injury. You know, this mare's 24 years old. So, but it's a good indicator, and the really great indicator part of it is those chest muscles coming across the front. That's like a huge, huge, huge one. So when you guys are going and you're looking at horses, or you're going to do an eval, or you know, you go, something just doesn't look right. It's just something to have in your toolbox of going, oh, isn't that interesting? And just get more curious about it. And then if you look at the pectorals, and if you can see them coming over like the front, yes, Brian, I can see your front now. If you can see them crossing in the front, that is another indicator of stomach stuff going on.
We definitely can see it on Zora.
So, all right. Did that help you guys out?
All right. So, any questions on that part that anybody has? That so doing the assessment and then doing the observations of how they walk away is typically where we start. Now, what you're going to go, why did I go to right to walking away and observation? Typically, that's not what's going to happen to you. You're going to be out working on your horse, and you're going to be doing a regular basic assessment or any assessment that we show you. And all of a sudden, this is going to start showing up, and you go, whoa, wait a minute. I'm going to quick test and see what goes on with the gastro assessment. I got all this, and then I'm going to walk the horse after that. So that's typically the order I end up doing it in, because you don't know you have a problem until you start touching the horse. So another good thing to do is that just start watching your horses as they're walking around in the field and coming in for grain and whatever they're doing. Start watching how they walk away and how they walk towards you. Start observing before you even start. This is what I tell my practitioners, is that I want you to start looking at them when they're being led up to you to start with, to start working at the horse. The time that you work on a horse isn't when, excuse me, when you start touching it, it's when the horse even comes into your sight. All right, does that make sense to everybody? All right, let's move on. So now comes, what can we do about it? So now we have the protocol. All right. It's very important in this to do the protocol in the order that I have it listed, steps 1 through 9. Believe me, this will save your life someday if you do so. Okay? So starting from this way is going to keep you safe. We had a off-the-track racehorse that we got pulled into because we were at a event in Kentucky, that they were having a hard time brushing this horse, And I went up and I started doing the assessment on a horse, regular assessment, and I didn't get any further than the neck. And this horse was, all 4 feet were jumping off the ground. And I went ahead and did the gastrointestinal assessment, and it went positive, and everything we did the walk went around. And when I guess I should really stick that back. When I hit the liver 3 point, which is the back of the ribs, it kicked out its back right foot sideways and took a full-size hay steamer and threw it 6 feet in the air. I don't think horses typically don't cow kick unless they're in a lot of pain. And that's what this horse did. And it only took a few sessions of doing these points, and we've seen a big change in the first time that we did them. And then afterwards, when we went back the next day, these girls were crawling around this horse because there was no pain anymore. So it does work very quickly. So we're going to take you through. Now you're going to do these in groups. Stomach 2 is at the eye. I'm going to show you where that's at. That you're going to do on both sides because you hit both sides at the same time. I love using 2 lights when we do the gastro protocol, okay? You can use 1 light with your hand on one side where the light would be. It's gonna work, but using 2 lights really make a difference, all right? And then you're gonna do number 2, GB14 and Bachway on the top. And then you're gonna, next one you're gonna do is liver 13 and pericardium 1. That's an error on there, that is liver 13.
Can you use your cursor to let?
I'm sorry. Yes. So stomach 2 is the first one. You're going to do this on both sides of the horse. Real easy because the horse is looking at you. Just make sure they don't bite you. All right. You can come from underneath with your hand on one side or the top, or from the front. Your next 2 is going to be GV14, which is here, and Bachway. These are introductory points that we use, but it helps to get things moving. When horses have lights put on them, there is something that is always secreted in their body. It's called serotonin. Serotonin is that drug that helps to settle down the stomach. So that's why we love using the light work for colic and ulcerations. Your next 2 points are pericardium 1 and liver 13. Pericardium is right here where we did the check on the cinch area up to the back rib. Everybody sees where those are at? Okay. Then our next 2 is going to be gallbladder 25, stomach 25. Now, when I say I go from front to back, I do the first one first. Then I do these 2 next. And then I go to, bladder 20, 21. And then I go over and do bladder 20, 21 from the other side. Now I can reach those all from one side, so it's easy to do. I do these on the left first, and then I do them on the right just by reaching over. Okay, if you can't, go to the other side. So you're going to do both sides before you move on to the next step. Does that make sense? Then I'm going to come back and do, now if you're already on the right side, you can switch to pericardium 1, liver 13 on the right, and then come back over and do pericardium 1, liver 13 on the left. You don't have to keep jumping back and forth that many times. And then you move to number 5, which is gallbladder 25. I'm on the left right now. And stomach 25, which is underneath. And I go over on the right-hand side and I do those 2 points. Okay? 10 to 30 seconds per point. Then I'm going to move to the front leg. Pericardium 6 and large intestine 4. These are amazing points for colic and ulcerations. All right? You're going to see a horse typically pick up their leg and paw 3 to 4 times and then put their weight down on it, and then you know it's starting to work. It's so interesting that they do. And then you go over and do the other leg. So now I'm back on the left-hand side. And at this point, I might take a little break. I might go back and check a few of the stuff and see if it's getting better. If it's not, I'm going to give them a little time for things to work because I don't want to get into the back area until things are better. All right. So the next point we're going to do is we're going to cradle the back leg between spleen 4 and liver 2. And I usually do this from the outside. I'm going to show you guys on the videos how to do this. I just want you to see what I'm doing here in picture first. and then go to stomach 36 and stomach 45 together, and then spleen 6 last. Spleen 6 should be last for both sides. There's a reason why. Spleen 6 will make them cow kick every single time when they're in pain. So you do not want to be in that kick zone, okay? Please, please don't call me up and say, oh my God, I just got kicked by the back horse because you didn't tell me that spleen 6 is so bad. If you don't understand that, what I want you all to do, you guys are going to see I'm in shorts, okay? I want you guys to do this at home. I'm going to try and get this down. Here's my ankle, a hand's width above your ankle, right in the middle of your leg. Push in. Tell me if you have some pain. You'll find out most guys are going to go, no, I'm good. Most ladies, women, will say, damn, that hurts. Some will, some won't. But that's what the horse feels. And so you got to be careful on that point. Now you're going to go, well, wait a minute, Brian. You were down on your ankle. Why is this up on the top part of the horse? Right? Way up on the leg? Remember, this area right here is our ankle. Does that make sense? That's the metatarsals. Just like our metatarsals on our, all this area down in here is our foot on a horse. They just have 1 digit instead of 5. Okay, so this is the ankle, and then this is the same bone coming up for the tibia bone. All right? Does that make sense? Okay, we're gonna move on to the next slide here. So the protocol is to assess. If the horse is extremely reactive on the physical assessment, you need to do the abort the assessment and move to the illumination of the gastro-ulcer points. You have to do these ulcer points in the order that's listed. It is so important, guys, and then doing both sides before you move on to the next point. It is going to save your life when you ever get on a horse that really has. And if you've never seen one of the horses, then you're going to go, what the heck's he talking about? But when you get on one that is ulcerated, believe me, it is really, really reactive. For the first couple sessions, you may not be able to illuminate all the points. Don't get discouraged. Just keep on working on it and the results will come quickly. Usually once you get it through the first time, I'm just going to say usually, the next time is going to be a lot less. And by the time you get to the fourth day or you do it usually every other day, you're going to find that all of a sudden all this is not there. Now, we'll put out there the whole thing that not every treatment always works. And it's not always the root cause, but we have really seen great results with this. So we're going to watch the 2 videos now of us doing those points.
Either the basic assessment or the actual assessment for finding gastrointestinal ulcer issues, and we do suspect something's going on. So now we're going to move into the point work. These points are very, very powerful. We have seen horses that we've gotten halfway through and the horse is already calmed down, so where all the reactions are gone. I'm not going to say you're going to get that result every time, but I have seen that many, many horses that after 4 sessions, every 2 days apart, after 4 sessions, all the issues are gone. That doesn't mean the ulceration's gone. That means you got to keep going. But all the reactions that are going on in the horse are gone, so the pain is out of them, which is great because a lot of the ulcers are coming from, and as we talked about in the literature that we're working with, is stress, environment, grief. All these things can be what's causing, and if you can eliminate these areas and eliminate the pain that's now in the body, you can cure these things. And we have seen it happen many, many times. So moving into the points, I'm going to do an overall and talk about it. What I want you to do, and this is very important, is you have to work from the front to the back. And I work with them in pairs. If you only have one light, what I want you to do is put the hand on one, the light on the other one, and then switch and do it the other way around. This first point is an optional point. Now, why do we call it that? It's stomach 2. We call it an optional point because if you have a horse that's so bad and you can't get at anything else than just the horse's face to start with, you can start with stomach 2, all right? I like to use it every time because I think it does a great job, but we put it in there because there is horses that, we've had horses that all we can do is get to them through a gate, they're so bad, or through a pen. So all we can do is work on their faces and one of the points I use is stomach 2. So stomach 2 is located right below the canthus of the eye. And I'll do a close-up of this to show you where it is. This is just going to be a single light. So you're just going to put this on with one light right now. And you're just going to do both sides. So when I do stomach 2, I do both sides right here, or put a hand here and then put it on one side. We'll do close-ups of these so you guys can get it. Your next 2 points are called Bakwe and GV14. So if you put your hand on the lowest part of the mane in front of the withers, and then run your hand down the back of the lumbar until you feel a soft spot before you get to the sacral. These are the 2 points you're going to do together. Now, we will show these with lights. And just pushing on this, you're seeing a horse just breathe, all right? So the next 2 points, this would be the third grouping you would do, is liver 13 and pericardium 1. And I'll talk about how to find these on the close-ups for you. The next point after that is bladder 20 and 21. So last rib, 20, 21. You can actually do them on this side and then do them on the opposite side if you want to. But you are going to do this on both sides of the body. Then you're going to move to, which is called gallbladder 25, which now she is actually chewing on that spot, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
So you put one light on gallbladder 25, then you're going to come down and make sure your feet are, because now you're getting into that area. I'm going to come down and find the umbilicus, come back about a hand's width, and stomach 25. Next set of points we're going to be doing is called pericardium 6, large intestine 4. So pericardium 6, large intestine 4, and I'll show you how to do this on the close-up for it. I'm going to be doing it on this leg. And at this point, we might take a little break because now we're going to move into the back of the horse and allow the horse to, and what I've also done is I've just gone and done this set of points to this point. I'm going to do it on the other side to give the horse some time to get this to work. And I'm looking for them to process. So I'm looking to them maybe start blowing out. I might come back and double check a couple of these areas just to make sure that we've gotten somewhere, because now you're going to get into the area where it could be slightly dangerous. All right. So we're going to move now to the back. Our next 2 points, and I just want to state, I am just pointing these out on a horse that is not ulcerated. So do not start learning how to do this on an ulcerated horse. Start practicing on your horse that is not ulcerated like we're doing right now. So then you can be a little bit safe to find these points. So we're looking at spleen 4 and liver 2. Spleen 4 and liver 2 together. Our next 2 points that we're going to do are stomach points. So you have stomach 36 and stomach 45. The reason I'm showing again in pairs, I want you to do these in pairs when you're doing them. And then our last point, and this is the most dangerous point, is spleen 6. And we're going to do that as a single point per side.
Okay, so I'm going to go in and look at some close-ups quick. Okay, ulcer points close-ups.
Pull in front of the withers right at the midline.
Again, it jumped ahead.
With lights. Now, because I'm using 2-light technique, what I typically do is I put the Pro-Gen 2 in my thing going back or down, all right? Standard light forward, but I'm gonna use it, the Pro-Gen 2 on low. I'm not gonna use it on high. If you don't understand how to change between, we have videos out there that help you do that. So the first point we talked about was stomach 2. It's about an inch below the corner of the eye. If you were to bring the head down, you'll notice that the blood vein comes together where 2 points, that's where it is. And what I do, make sure my light's on low. Okay, it's on low. Put the other one on low. If it's too much for a horse, I'm just gonna do one light. If she's fine with that, I'm gonna put 2 lights on and do this at the same time. And I'm gonna sit here for maybe from 10 to 30 seconds, just to where where there was a change, where she pulled away now and she said, nope, I'm good and I'm done with that. That would be stomach 2. Our second group of points, we're gonna be looking at GV14 and Bach Way. GV14, if you run your hand down before the withers, you'll find this deepest spot, hole in front of the withers right at the midline. And then coming all the way down, you follow the lumbar to where you get into a soft spot before the sacral, and that's the Bach Way. So you're gonna put the standard light forward, Pro-Gen 2 on low. Again, when we're doing point work, you do not have to have it on high. It doesn't do you any good. So I'm gonna stand here with these 2 on here. This is gonna open the whole back up and relax it, and get the horse to start getting used to what's happening with the lights and feeling that we're getting rid of pain. So they tend to start to relax and not be as reactive once we start putting the light on. And again, about 10 to 30 seconds. Don't be in a rush on these 2 points.
You guys notice I'm laying my
Points that we're
hand.
going to be doing is called bladder 20 and 21. So we're talking about spleen and stomach. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find the shelf of the ribs, come back to where I feel the last rib come up, and then at about a hand's width away, if I just come up that direction, I'm gonna find bladder 21. And if I go to the intercostal space of the next rib, follow that up, I'm gonna find bladder 20, or about an inch to 1.5 inches apart. So you're gonna find these 2 points. Very simply, put your lights on, put it on the first point, put it on the second point. And just sit here for, again, 10 to 30 seconds. The nice thing about these 2 is when you go to do the other side, all I gotta do is take my hands and go over, and I can do the other side without having to walk to the opposite side of the horse.
Again, notice I'm always touching the horse with my arms and my hands.
Next 2 points we're looking at is pericardium 1 and liver 13. Pericardium 1, you'll find that if you go right off, basically off this muscle off the side of the leg, come straight back, you're gonna find a hole that lands right about 2 fingers behind the leg. That's pericardium 1. And then if you follow the last rib down to where it starts to turn, you're gonna come forward 1 extra rib, or in the space between the last and the second last rib, you're gonna feel what's called the costochondral space. Your intercostal space intersecting with the costochondral junction, which means between the ribs and where the cartilage of the ribs connect, okay? So that's liver 13, and we're gonna put the light on pericardium 1 first, then slide it into this point and sit with our feet sideways or to the back, and sit here and allow the horse to absorb the light. Again, don't be in a rush. This has to take some time because you're affecting pain and muscles. So you want them to have the time to sit here and relax into this. And if you have to, you just move and do the other side next. So that's one way to go slower, is to do it on this side and then go do it on the other side. Do it on this side and then go do the other side. All right? That's the way I actually recommend for you to do it. Let's move to our next set of points. Gallbladder 25, stomach 25. Gallbladder 25 is pretty simple. It's in line with what's called bladder 23. But if you feel on a horse, there's usually a dip in right about in this area. Where that dip is pretty close to where it is. It's slightly behind the last rib, right in between the last rib and the hip. Go halfway in between, you come down, you'll just fall right into a hole. I have it marked just a little bit lower than it should be. And then stomach 25 is in line with this. So if you come down and you feel in the center of the horse, and you feel the belly button, okay? Come about a hand's width in before you get to where this blood vein is here. It's about 3 to 4 fingers away. Just pull out, you'll feel you're gonna run into the more tissue. That's stomach 25. So when you put your lights on, gallbladder 25 on the top, find the umbilicus, come out. Tummy 25. Turn your feet so that they're with the horse. Put your arm against the horse so if they do react, you can push away, get away from this. Then they won't come over the top of you. Do these 2 points on this side, and then again, go do them on the opposite side. You're going to work your way the same from both sides, all the way down from front to back. All right, our next 2 points are pericardium 6, large intestine 4. Pericardium 6, if you look at the groove in the middle of the inside of the leg, in line with the chestnut, you'll find pericardium 6. Pretty simple. Large intestine 4, again, is in the center groove below the knee, about 1/3 of the way down. Now, I'm just showing you the marks on this side, but I'm going to be actually working on this leg. Now, we use a method here. If you only have one light, again, you're just going to put one hand hold down here while you put the light on the other side. The method I like to use is I put from the front, put one light on, from the back, do the other light on, because the horses that have an issue, I always put the top one on first, then I put the bottom one on, and I capture the leg. Horses that have an issue with this will tend to pick the leg up and paw multiple times. I always say 3 times, that's typically what they do, but you know, everything's different. And then what they'll do is they'll push their weight down on it and just relax. And then you hang out there for about another 15 seconds. So I'm gonna put the light on, hold it here, and I'm gonna see if I can mimic this for you so you can kind of see what it looks like. I'll have her pick her leg up. So they'll pick the leg up and they'll paw, and they'll paw, and then they'll put their weight down. That was pretty good in mimicking it. And she's doing pretty good, good girl. All right? And so that's why you want to have both hands on it, because if you have both hands, you have that freedom to sit and move, and then let it come down and hold. You have to go through that motion in order to get this to work correctly. Our next 2 points we're going to be looking at is spleen 4 and liver 2. I'm just showing you on this leg where they're located. The location is when this blood vessel comes across this center groove, that's spleen 4. And if you go to the hock in the back and come off to the side, you're going to feel a hole right here. That's where liver 2 lives. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do this on the leg that's in front of me. And if you're getting a lot of reactions right now with this, step back and let the horse sit for a while, because you let the other points go in, so the more they are activated, the less reaction you're going to have back here. So you're going to start first with putting the hand on the inside of the leg. So I'm on this point right here. Then the outside foot, or the inside, I'm going to cup my hand over the hock and hold it on liver 2. Because if she does pick her feet up, I have it captured now. And you may have to hang on to this and have it captured while this is going on. If this is too much, you can change to just one light and hold the foot, and then do the other light. But typically, if you hang on to it, get used to this, if they do pick their feet up, you've got it. And then usually all they'll do is they'll pick the foot up and kind of quiver a little bit and then come down with it again. So it usually isn't too bad. It's not as reactive typically as what the front one is. But you want to capture this so that way, just in case they were to kick, you've got your hand here to stop it from happening. If you want to do another little trick that can be safe, you can have hold of the tail as you're doing this, if the tail's long enough, or you can have somebody come and hold the tail for you here and hold the horse so that the leg cannot come out at you. That's another option you can do. As a secondary option, what you can do is you can come and you can actually do the opposite leg like this. Because now getting kicked, she can't kick at you, but you got to be careful of this leg coming at you. So those are all options you can use, but typically all I do is come across here, and hold the leg. When we're doing these back 2 points now, I showed you doing them close up. Your position is very important. I know it's really unorthodox. If you have to, you could go down on one knee, but you are very vulnerable at this point. I like to stand my feet here and put this on quickly and grab, because they will pick their foot up right away, so you grab, or you can come in both at the same time and have your head up as much as you can. Our next 2 points are our stomach points. Stomach 36 at stomach 45. Stomach 36, if you come down and you can hook your finger in between the top of the tibia bone and then come slightly forward. Or what I do is I go and put my finger, 2 fingers, I make a C on the front, very front of the foot, of the leg, and then just put my index finger in, and that hits stomach 36. Center of foot on the bottom, about 1 inch above the coronary band. In this groove, you're going to find stomach 45. So you're just going to put one light on here, the next light on stomach 45. Typically, if you've gotten to this point, they will just sit here for these points here. And then you go and do the opposite side. Our next and last point that we're going to be doing is called spleen 6. You'll see spleen 6. If you come down the center of the leg where this blood vein crosses over, you find spleen 6. Now, this is one of the most reactive points that are on a horse. So the way you're going to get this, and what I do first, is I come to the inside of the leg, feel for that blood vein in the center, and I have my feet within, out of striking zone, because what a horse will do is they will come through and cow kick here. So you've got to be careful. I had a horse take a hay steamer and kick it 6 feet to the side, and that was a full bale size. So I'm going to come down with the light in the center of the leg, as you can see on some reaction here, and I'm just going to hold one hand with my head up, so out of the kick zone, and just sit through this and just relax through it. Breathe while the horse is doing its breathing, and just hang out for a good 30 seconds. Very, very powerful point for ulcerations. Then you do the opposite side.
Okay, Brian, we've got several questions.
Lots of questions, I hope.
Yes. So,
Let's go back so we're looking at that chart.
correct.
Okay, let's have some questions.
All right, so I'm going to start out by saying that Shelly May says that she's pretty sure she worked on a horse that had ulcers. The horse tried to bite and double barrel kick her. So
That'd be one.
yeah. Mayor Gilbert's question is, doing the points act as a preventive as well?
Absolutely. That is what I want you to do. When your horse is as reactive as what Zora was, that's when you should be doing it. Okay?
And
if you know you have a horse that is prone to ulcers, then you just do this once a week as a preventive.
I'm also going to jump in and say that this is also really great for horses that tend to colic a lot.
Yes.
So be aware of that. If you have a horse that tends to colic quite a bit, we had one that, like, every time, like, the seasons changed or there was a new full moon, blood moon or whatever, like, she would go into colic. And so we figured out that, okay, we need to be on the preventive side. And so we used actually these gastrointestinal points, and now, knock on wood, she hasn't had a situation like that in, gosh, almost 2 years. So super important for prevention.
You also can use it for when you have a horse that has a difficult colic or one that hasn't been caught right away. So I was brought out to a horse that they were in the 4th day of the colic, and the horse was going to go septic, and they were going to put it down the next day. And what I did is I did the colic points, and then I did the ulceration points after that. And the horse got done with the ulceration points and blew out, went in, took a drink of water, ran about 40 feet, and pooped. And the gentleman ran out there and scooped up all the poop and put some water in it, and all the oil raised to the top, and we knew that it released the blockage, and the horse was fine.
Yeah. So never underestimate the power of red light, even if it's, I mean, it's not over till it's over. So, so we did have a typo. We missed a 1.
Yes.
So your charts will have the correct number on it. So we apologize for that.
That's on number 4 where it says liver 3. It's supposed to be liver 13.
13. So
That's on the place.
Mayor says, what about the Pro Light and the using the Pro Light and the Pro Gen 2? So can you just give generic guidelines, not powers, but generic guidelines on where to put the least powerful, where to put the more powerful?
Yep. In the case of where you have just a Pro Light and a Pro Gen 2, because you'll be able to put the Pro Gen 2 on low, that's going to be then become the least powerful light. So just as a general reaction or general area is that the more powerful light goes to the back of the horse and to the ventral side or lower side of the horse. So the standard or less power light always goes up, more powerful light goes down, less powerful light goes forward, more powerful light goes to the back, just as a general rule.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see here. Tom Pompey, can you talk about how often to use this protocol for a horse with ulcers? Every day?
Yes. And because you're doing more than just point work with this, you are releasing muscles depending on the severity of what's going on. We even have done where we've done twice a day for like the first day or first 2 days, and then we start backing down to once a day and then out to every other day to every third day. Usually by the time you get to the 4th to 5th session of doing this, the horse gets better. Now, when we did this on the race horses, Donna had one horse, and it was so cute and funny because she's like, she touched the horse in 2 spots, says, "Oh, your horse, Brian," because she knew it was ulcerated. And we only got a chance. Did we go out there every 3 days? I can't remember. Yeah, we did every 2 to 3 days we went out there. And there was a world of difference by the second session with this horse. I mean, you couldn't even pet this horse. And by the second session, which was 2 days later, was allowing us to do all the point work, no problem. And by the 4th session, you swore there was nothing wrong. There was no ulcerating problems with this horse.
Right.
Now, during that point, that means that it starts the healing process. So you got to keep going.
Yes.
So we always say that once you get the actual normal protocol is every other day for the first 3 sessions, and then moving it out to every third day to where you get down with about 3 works of 3. So you get about 12 times in a 3-week period. That typically will take care of most issues we're going. And then after that, you're going to go into a maintenance of once to twice a week until all the issues are gone. All right.
So Tom, one of the things is if, so I'm going to use the example that Shelley talked about, like the horse that you worked on where she tried to bite and then double barrel you. Those are obviously very, very, those horses are in extreme amounts of pain. And there are some situations where you guys might only be able to red light or illuminate 2 points to start with. You might just get the stomach 2 and the Bachway and the GV14 illuminated, and that might be it for the day, or that might be it for the session because they are in so much pain. So don't be alarmed if that happens. You will be actually quite surprised that when you go back, how, like if you go back within 24 hours to 48 hours, how much of a shift can occur. And so one of the things is that when we're using these acupuncture points, we're using, it's a combination we're opening up those those energetic pathways to allow energy to flow there so that we can accelerate the healing process. The other thing that that does is it helps with the movement of stem cells throughout that meridian channel. And that is so incredibly critical for the recovery process. And it's also a natural pain reliever. So we got to get the horse out of pain first and foremost. We've got to remove the stimulus that's causing the ulcers so that the horse can heal. We have had, we were out in Colorado, and there was a lady that had a mule that had severe ulcers. She'd been dealing with it for 2 years, tried absolutely everything. We were her last resort. She followed this protocol, and within a month, she was blown away. The mule just gone, like ulcers were gone. So it's incredibly, incredibly powerful, and don't be alarmed. You know, if you guys do encounter those horses or the mules that get that reactive, I also want you to be aware that you might have to hold your light off of the animal, off of the horse, if they are that reactive. So the question was, do we still open the bladder meridian prior to treating?
For assessing wise, well, depending what's going on, the first time when you go to meet a horse, more than likely you're going to open the bladder meridian anyway, because you're not knowing that you're going to be dealing with ulcers, and you might get some feedback already when just petting over the horse that might tell you, whoa, something's going on here.
Right, because
I've always opened it beforehand. After that, I haven't seen where I have to as much, but once I get past to where the points they're not as reactive, I'm going to be going back in and doing a regular assessment anyway, just to see if there's anything else I need to be working on once the horse allows me to do that. So I'm always opening the bladder meridian.
Yeah. So the other thing is that if you guys get to that point and you can't finish the assessment, just go right to doing this protocol. Like, abort everything else. I cannot stress enough. Abort everything else. Change your agenda. Be able to shift gears and refocus.
And you probably aren't going to get a chance to do it anyway. I have never found, in my horses I've worked on, I've never gotten through the regular assessment one that's been ulcerated. I've always had to switch because they're so reactive that it's just like, oh, no, I'm just backing away. I'm just going to go right into doing the points right away or doing the other ulceration assessment.
Yeah, correct. So Marianne says, as a preventive, for instance, like long distance trailering, would you use this protocol or something different? And how far in advance of the stressful event would you start, and how often?
Usually we say that it's good to do at least within 24 hours before the event. If you know you have a horse that is going to go on a long haul, it's not a bad thing to do this like an hour or within an hour before you go to put them in the trailer.
But you could do it up to 48 hours beforehand. And if you have a typical nervous horse anyways that maybe doesn't like trailering, you could do it a couple times beforehand.
Yeah.
And then do it. And then as soon as the event is over, hit these points immediately. That's the biggest thing. Hit them immediately afterwards.
It takes them out of that parasympathetic or sympathetic mode and puts them into parasympathetic mode right away.
Yeah.
And really makes a difference. Yeah. We haven't talked about that too much in this course, but that's some of what it's doing.
Yeah. Great, great questions. Awesome. So this is a very timely topic. We just had a situation with a student, and she was working on a horse, and she was so focused on her itinerary and doing everything the right way and doing things in order, that when this horse came up reactive, she didn't shift gears and go, oh, could this be a gastrointestinal thing? She just went, well, okay, and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And that's great, except what ended up happening was another practitioner came in and went, oh my gosh, this horse is in so much pain. What the heck is going on? So it's one of those things that if you get that type of response, this is like a complete default. Like, go here next. Go here next if it's not related to an accident or an injury. The other thing to be aware of is if you have a horse or if you're dealing with a horse, maybe it's a high level performance horse and they're used to being in work every day and they sustain like a really traumatic injury, or they've got their environment changes substantially. You might just want to be on the preventive side and just kind of keep an eye on it and hit these gastrointestinal points every once in a while, just to make sure that it doesn't manifest into a larger problem.
Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing so you can see Donna talk maybe a little bit.
Well, I think that, do you guys have any further questions? We did better tonight on staying with our time. So
turn yourself on, Donna, so they can see you at the end here. There you are.
Here I am. So if you guys don't have any questions, then what we are going to do is we are going to get this the recording out to you guys tomorrow. By Friday at the very latest. We are a little bit short-staffed right now due to COVID. And so we are doing the absolute best that we can. And so what we're going to do is our team will have this out to you by the end of the day, Friday at the very latest. There will be a PDF. You will be able to watch the replay. And what we're going to do is we will also put in the links for the video, so you can go right to those videos that Brian shared with you guys. And you don't have to try and find it throughout this presentation. So.
Lenshin did have a question that we didn't answer. She said our step 3 and 4 reversed. I believe in the video, because we shot these as individuals and we had our person put them together in the order. The first time when I talked about it, I did show step 4 and 3 reversed, but then when I did the close-up, I did it correctly. It is as it is listed on the chart is correct.
Correct.
So step 3 is bladder 20, 21, and then you go down to do pericardium and liver 13 in step 4. But if you did it those two, you could change around and really won't hurt that much because you're right in that same spot.
Yep. So awesome. And we apologize for the technical difficulties.
We still got through it.
We got through it, and we can't control the internet and we can't control the Florida weather. So
right.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Join me a couple weeks we got coming up. I'm going to be doing a free webinar, Health Made Simple, and it is going to be all about brain health. I have a special guest. He is a specialty neuro doctor that is actually using our pad system on brain stuff. So I'm super excited about that. Keep an eye out for that. We'd love to have you guys. You guys are always amazing. Keep up the great work. Stay healthy. Stay happy.
And let us know if you want us to keep doing these.
Yeah. What topics you guys would like to see. So have a great evening, everybody.